The Epic of Gilgamesh. Let's start with the characters and the events. So, the first character we're going to talk about is Gilgamesh. Who is Gilgamesh? Well, he was an actual human that lived thousands of years ago, and he was the ruler, the king of Uruk. Now, younger Gilgamesh was kind of a big jerk, um, or worse. He was abusive to his subjects. To his male subjects, he was physically abusive to them, made great demands on them, and to his female subjects, to the younger ones, he raped them. So for weddings, he would have sex with the bride, non-consensual sex with the bride, before she was married. There's some question in my mind, did he also have sex with younger females? Because it talked about females that were still with their mothers. So maybe they were adults, but they weren't yet married. Um, the people of Uruk were not happy with this situation, and so as time went by, they complained more and more. So the gods finally got the message, and the head god directed the goddess Aruru to make a companion for Gilgamesh. And that goddess, Aruru, is an incredible goddess. She's able to make humans. So Enkidu, this hairy creature, and Aruru went to an open field, pinched off some clay, tossed it in the field, and made Enkidu. So as casual as that sounds, she it sounds like she kind of chose the temperament of Enkidu to be compatible with Gilgamesh, that they would be a good match for each other. It's also interesting to me that in his early days, Enkidu is going around with the gazelles and drinking from the ponds with the gazelles. If he finds an animal that's trapped, he releases the trapped animals, and the hunters are getting frustrated because they can't make money because they can't capture the animals. It's almost like Enkidu is a vegetarian or a vegan. They didn't have those terms back in those days, I imagine. So, but it's like he has that temperament. He doesn't eat meat, and when an animal is trapped, he's releasing it. So that's Enkidu. Again, he is human, but he is um, he's compatible with Gilgamesh. So he's releasing the animals from the traps, and the people are getting frustrated. So one thing leads to another, and they decide to enlist the help of a prostitute. This is a temple prostitute or a sacred prostitute, and her name is Shamhat. So back in those days, you had prostitutes like you have prostitutes today, where they're not highly respected. You're paying for sex, but they also had prostitutes where you're paying for sex that were part of the temple, and these individuals were considered sacred prostitutes, and they actually could have some prestige. So it was this kind of a person who was asked to go and help um, kind of bring Enkidu into civilization, into human civilization, and make Enkidu less wild and more civilized. So it's funny because the things that the civilized people do seems wild to me, and the things that Enkidu did as a wild person seems civilized to me. Anyway, so she does that, and the way that she's going to do it, that they talk to her about, is, let's kind of come into Enkidu's world. Let's say he's drinking water at the pond, and you just go ahead and take off your clothes and then become sexually joined with Enkidu. And that's what happened. And they had sex for something like 6 days, and uh, you know, a long time, 6 days. Um, and um, and she began to enculturate Enkidu into the ways of being a human being, the clothing that Enkidu would wear, and some mannerisms and so forth, including the food that he would eat. Now, back in those days, you could eat meat, but it's interesting that the story that they tell, Enkidu isn't eating meat, kind of like a vegetarian or a vegan. He's eating bread and he's drinking alcohol. That's what Shamhat is having him eat as part of his um, humanizing, his being brought into civilization. So that seems to go pretty well. And Gilgamesh and Enkidu have not met each other. I think they've dreamed about each other, so they can see something's on the horizon, but they haven't met each other yet. So one day, Gilgamesh is out there in his kingdom. There's bride and a groom. They're about to be married, and sure enough, Gilgamesh is planning to go into that house and the bride. But Enkidu is blocking the way. He's standing in the door and won't let Gilgamesh go through. So they have a physical altercation, Enkidu and Gilgamesh. So I think in some stories, Gilgamesh wins, and in other stories, Enkidu wins, or it's tied. But either way, Gilgamesh has a lot of respect for Enkidu. And Enkidu must have been a pretty powerful person to so closely match Gilgamesh when Gilgamesh is already part god. He's a demigod, and yet Enkidu is so powerful he's able to pretty much match him. So they embrace, and that's the start of their friendship. So although Gilgamesh starts out as a jerk, throughout this story there is a kind of maturation process that goes through with Enkidu, which is kind of a sophisticated feature of the story, and it's just interesting to find that in a story that's so old. This being the oldest known story that we have on Earth. So what happens next? Well, that little icon that I have there for you is the sun god, and that's the sun god, and he's up there in the air, and he can talk to you. He can make announcements to you up in the air, and you can pray to him down on the ground. So Gilgamesh and this sun god get along very, very well. And Gilgamesh decides that he wants to have an adventure with Enkidu, and Gilgamesh wants to go to the cedar forest. And this is a forest that belongs to the gods. It does not belong to Gilgamesh. Anyway, he wants to go to the forest. This is a sacred forest, and so the gods decided that they were going to have a guardian there. So they made this creature called Humbaba, and Humbaba is described as a giant or a monster, but really his job is to guard the forest, to guard the animals in the forest. So Humbaba has these cloaks that he wears, and it sounds like they're like energy shields. And if you come across them in the forest, he can throw them at you and smash you against the tree or the ground or so forth. So the two, after they get blessings, and there's quite a bit of that, people are discouraging them from doing that. They're telling Enkidu, "Hey, you go first, Enkidu, and you protect Gilgamesh, so that Gilgamesh doesn't get hurt. You sacrifice yourself for the king." Anyway, they decide to go off on this long journey to go into the cedar forest. And so they do that. They're getting into the cedar forest, and off in the distance, they can hear Humbaba roaring, and it's kind of scary. They can hear him off in the distance making his cries, um, and they're scared. It scares them, and it's interesting because when they do finally intercept Humbaba, and Gilgamesh is praying to the sun god, you know, give me some advantage here, decrease some of his energy shields, and and so they do, and so they're able to attack Humbaba. Now Humbaba is scared, and there's a point there where he's begging for his life, and Gilgamesh is going to give it to, he's going to spare him, and Enkidu says, "No, kill him," and so they kill him. So the other thing that these two supposed heroes do is they kind of decimate the forest. They decided they wanted to take the cedar trees back to Uruk and build something with it. Maybe build some doors, some pillars, and stuff. And so they take a lot of trees with them. They also take the head of Humbaba. That'll be good for a story or two when they get back. And when they do that, they come back, it makes me wonder, well, what about the animals, that are left behind that don't have their homes because they ruined the forest. And again, they're taking from the forest. This is not theirs. This belongs to the gods. So That's probably part of the reason why Enkidu didn't want to do this in the first place. He didn't think that was a great idea. Okay, so anyway, they go back. They go back to base camp, back to Uruk, his kingdom, and lo and behold, there is this other goddess, Ishtar. Now, she is the goddess of war and I think pleasure and love, just a really odd combination of things, but that's how it works. Uh, Ishtar, it turns out, has gotten involved with a lot of other creatures as lovers, but those creatures haven't um, benefited from the relationship. In fact, the relationship with Ishtar has caused them a lot of problems. And Gilgamesh meets Ishtar because Ishtar is so impressed that he was able to destroy Humbaba with the help of Enkidu, and bring back the cedar trees and the head of Humbaba. And she's so impressed with him, she's just like falling in love with him, and she wants him. But Gilgamesh is reminding Ishtar of what happened to all her other romantic liaisons and how it didn't end well for them. And he does it in a way that's insulting. So Ishtar is very upset. I guess she's crying. She goes to her father, God, who has a lot of power, and she's very upset. She's very angry. How dare Gilgamesh humiliate her like this? So she starts asking for this creature that she wants to use to go after Gilgamesh, go after Uruk. And the creature is called the Bull of Heaven. So this is a huge animal. And of course, the god, I think it's her father, says no the first time. And so she keeps nagging him. And then he says, okay. So he gives her the Bull of Heaven, and the Bull of Heaven is turned loose on Uruk. So he's going around. I guess he's stomping on some houses and some walls and stuff, and he's ruining the crops and really causing quite a bit of trouble. So Gilgamesh and his sidekick Enkidu, I guess like Batman and Robin, they go after the Bull of Heaven. And they defeat the Bull of Heaven, and I think they rip off its leg and they throw it at Ishtar, which is also especially insulting. So what happens after that? Well, what happens after that is um, the gods are displeased with what Gilgamesh and Enkidu have done. They've said, they've decided one of them must die, and then they decide it can't be Gilgamesh, so it's got to be Enkidu. So they make Enkidu sick, and he's sick for a period of days. Gilgamesh is by his best friend's side, and he's trying to take care of him, and then his friend dies after a few days. And of course, Gilgamesh is tremendously upset, and he comes face to face with the reality of death. There's a passage there that describes the worm fell out of Enkidu's nose because he had been there for quite some time, laying there dead. So he had an intimate, exposure to what death is. Gilgamesh did, and he does not like it one bit. So he does not want to die himself. So he gets the idea in his head that he wants to live forever. He wants immortality. So what does he have to do to get immortality? So he goes on an adventure. So some things happen. He goes on this adventure, and he comes basically back in those days. The world was flat. The world was flat. So he's going to the edge of the world because he has heard that there is this person, this entity that was human, and through a series of events, the gods, I guess, had pity on him and granted him immortality. So he wants to go to that person, uh, Utnapishtim, and find out, hey, what's the secret? How did you get immortality? I want that too. All right, so that's where he's going, and he's by himself. He's dressed in lion skins. He's not really taking care of himself. He's been mourning the death of his best friend for so long, so he's looking pretty ragged. He comes across in his travels. He comes across a mountain and an entrance to the mountain, which is guarded by a scorpion monster or creature. And the scorpion creature says, "Hey, hey, hey, you can't go into this tunnel. No, 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 no." and this tunnel is for the sun. So Gilgamesh, for the sun, what do you mean? Gilgamesh tells him that, tells him what the situation is and what he's trying to do, and he wants to go into that tunnel so he can get to the other side to find Utnapishtim. And so his wife, the scorpion's wife, also a scorpion creature, says, they talk, and she's encouraging him to let Gilgamesh go through the tunnel so he can get to the other side. So here's the deal. Here's how it works. The sun rises in the morning on the other side of that tunnel, on the other end. He goes up in the sky, and the sun god, he's rising up in the sky, shining his light on this flat world. And then when he comes down, he lands at the opening of the tunnel where Gilgamesh is. Okay, and so it's nighttime. Okay, so what happens to the sun god at nighttime? Well, in this world, at nighttime, the sun god runs through the tunnel of the mountain as fast as he can, and it basically takes him all night to do that. And then when he gets out on the other end of the tunnel, because he's a sun god and he makes light, that is the sunrise. And then he repeats the next day, he repeats the same action. He rises up in the sky, the sun god, all the way to the other end. Well, here's the deal. If Gilgamesh goes into that tunnel, he has to run as fast as he can to get to the other end. And he has to do it before the sun god gets into the entrance of the tunnel. Because the sun god gets into the entrance tunnel, he's going to run like crazy, and he's going to run into Gilgamesh, and that will kill Gilgamesh. Okay, so Gilgamesh understands, he still wants to do this, and he does it. He succeeds. He beats the sun god. He comes out on the other end in this beautiful, like fruit forest, and the fruit is described as this kind of like jeweled fruit, and it's like glowing, and it's I guess it would be like sunset at that time. So it sounds absolutely beautiful. Okay, so after this, Gilgamesh finally does find Utnapishtim and asks him, how did you he gets to get to that point where he gets to ask him, how did you become immortal? What can I do to become immortal? So this uh, once human and now immortal tells him, okay, so if you want to become immortal, you're gonna have to get this from the gods, but to get their interest, you have to at least stay awake for something like 7 days. And Gilgamesh, says, of course I can do that. I can stay awake for 7 days. And then what does he do? He immediately falls asleep. So long story short, um, he stays asleep for the 7 days instead of staying awake. He's asleep for the entire time. He wakes up. He realizes that he has been asleep that entire time, and he's quite upset. Now he realizes that he cannot have everlasting life. He cannot be immortal. The wife of Utnishtim tells or suggests to his husband, how about letting Gilgamesh know where this plant is, this little plant that grows at the bottom of the ocean, and he can get that plant, eat it, and it will return him to his youth. He won't live forever, but he'll like get 2 lives for the price of one. So they do. They tell Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh thanks him very much, and he has some hope there, and so he dives. I guess he ties a rock around his foot, so it will help him sink to the bottom of the ocean. And he finds the plant as it's been described to him. He comes back up, detaches the rock from his foot, comes back up, and then he is making his journey home. And then on his way home, he decides to take a swim. And when he in another lake or whatever, and when he comes back, he had placed the rejuvenation plant on the shore. When he came back, he saw as he was coming back, he saw a snake come up and eat the plant, all of it, gobbled it up. And then as the snake moved away back into the shrubbery, it shed its skin. So Gilgamesh is now completely, utterly, just completely hopeless. He's not going to get immortality, and he's not going to even get a second chance of life. So there is a maturation process that happens, I think, throughout this story. Um, at this point, he makes it. He goes back to his he goes back to his kingdom, to Uruk. So that's the basic series of events, and those are the basic characters for the Epic of Gilgamesh. So one of the great things about reading the classics is that they can answer some of the big questions that we have, like why are we here? How do we make friends? How do we live? How do we get more meaning in our life? The classics can help to answer some of those questions, and they should be able to do that because they're classics. I think that's just one of the features, by their very nature, of being classics. So there's the passage that I wanted to share with you from the story, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I want to give you a little bit of a background here. What's happening here in the story is Gilgamesh, this is towards the end of the story, the tale, and Gilgamesh is on a journey to find out if he can have immortal life. So he's wandering and he's going to the edge of the world to try to find that man who was born human, but who became immortal by the gods. So on his journey, he comes upon a tavern and he meets the tavern keeper outside of the tavern. He looks pretty rough because he's been doing a lot of walking and not taking care of himself so much. I think he killed a lion and he's wearing the lion skin, so he probably doesn't smell very good. He's not clean, he's not shaven. And the tavern keeper is questioning him, like, you say you're a king, and you look like hell. Um, but Gilgamesh explains what he's doing, what his mission is, and the tavern keeper has an answer for him. And it's interesting because the answer goes, I think the answer is meant for us, the audience, from whoever wrote this book, and it just kind of bypasses Gilgamesh. He just kind of ignores it. So let me just share this with you and see what you think. As for you, Gilgamesh, let your stomach be full. Always be happy, night and day. Make every day a delight, night and day. Play and dance. Your clothes should be clean. Your head should be washed. You should bathe in water. Look proudly on the little one holding your hand. Let your mate always be blissful in your loins. This, then, is the work of mankind. He who is alive should be happy. And then how does Gilgamesh respond? What are you saying, tavern keeper? I am heartsick for my friend. What are you saying, tavern keeper? I am heartsick for Enkidu. So it's like she has a message there of a way to live, that it is the work of mankind to be happy. There's some value in what's being said there. And when the tavern keeper is saying that, mankind should be happy and they should dance and play, you get a sense that it's not she's not referring to total debauchery or hedonistic lifestyle necessarily, because you're washed, you're clean, so you're taking care of yourself and you're taking care of others. So what are some of the other big answers that this book offers to the big questions that we have? I think I agree with the idea that friendship is something that can help a healthy friendship is something that can help a person develop empathy, to kind of help develop their empathy in a more nuanced way. Um, we certainly saw how Gilgamesh responded to the death of his friend, the worm falling out of his friend's nose, the just him falling apart, basically having a nervous breakdown over his friend's death, Enkidu. And really, part of that, I think, is the emotional, not just the cognitive, but the emotional coming to terms with the idea that you're going to die. So you have that limitation. You are mortal, whether you like it or not. even though you are a demigod, you're still going to die. And so mortality, to know your mortality is to know your limitations. The other thing is uh, that I think this book offers is um, raising the issue of meaning of life. What is the meaning of life for you? Okay, so there's a personal journey that you go on to find the meaning of life for you. That's what Gilgamesh did. I think the book offers that as a kind of solution, as a kind of answer to the questions that we might be having. So the meaning of life is not a flippant answer. Um, you know, it's something that we develop. We have to answer that for ourselves. It's unique for each one of us. What is the meaning of our life? And we answer that by going on a personal journey, according to this book here. To me, that rings true. That makes sense. In life, if you want to develop um, an individual kind of a way of living and a purpose for your life, you need to go through some kind of journey to find out what the meaning of life is for you. What is the meaning of life for Gilgamesh? For him, I think since immortality was such an important matter, and not just immortality, I mean, it's the idea of I could eat that plant and get another chance at living my life, going back to my youth again. It's just like any amount of just making my life longer, uh, you know, not dying or putting off death as long as possible. That's kind of what seems to me is Gilgamesh's focus. So the what what is meaningful for Gilgamesh, I think, becomes clear when we see him go back to Uruk, and he's talking about how he built the walls and of the city that he rules, and kind of like the idea that it's going to be around for a long time because of what he did. So he was building his legend, and I think that for him, that is his meaning of life is to build a legacy that will last. So here is the evaluation form that I made up. And I just really wanted to reinforce for myself and also for you the idea that classics should offer multiple benefits and to find out, if they really do. So for each book that's on my classic book list, I want to do this reading form, this reading experience evaluation form, and find out, did I get anything from this? I mean, yeah, you can kind of read it and feel like you got something from it, but I want to know, pointedly, did I get the benefits? Because if it's truly a classic, it should offer most, if not all, of the benefits. And it's also perhaps a way to show you that I got the benefits from reading this book. This form is available for you down below, so you can print it out and go along with me if you want to, if you have read the Epic of Gilgamesh, or you can just watch me, whichever. So the top half of the form is purely just subjective with the stars, and then the lower half of the form is objective and subjective. I can't make it purely objective, but I'm trying to make it as objective as possible, just to kind of show myself and to show you, at least from my reading experience, I did or did not get, or to what degree I got those benefits. Okay, so the book that we're talking about here is the Epic of Gilgamesh. I'll just write this in blood if you don't mind. Gilgamesh. And the start and end dates, if you want to write that down for you, you certainly can. The author is not known. It'd be funny if his name was Bob. This is edition number 2. The translator, I think, is Foster. And the genre is epic poem because it's got a hero. And the hero is someone who's mighty, very powerful, strong person, demigod. We've got Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Okay, subjective star rating. Shade the number of stars to show your subjective rating and how much you like the book. Okay. So I think just emotionally wise, coming to this book, over the few days. It took me about 3 days to read this book. I think what feels right to me, just a reading experience, is 3 stars. I think I would give it, I could give it a half, like 3.5 stars, but I'm going to give it a full 4 stars. Hey, coloring is fun. Okay, so I would give it 4 stars. Okay. So the lower form here, so we have a scoring system here. Okay, place a mark in one box that equals some of that benefit, whatever it is. First one is improved vocabulary. Place a mark in both boxes if you felt like you got a lot of whatever that was. So what I did is I went back to the book, to the very start of the book, and I checked every page to see how many vocabulary words I circled, and I wanted to include my vocabulary. And it was about 5 vocabulary words. So that's not a super whole bunch for me. Now, see, that's kind of subjective, isn't it? Maybe for you, 5 is a lot. So, or maybe it's like nothing. I don't know. But for me, 5 is not that many. If it was a couple, then I wouldn't check any boxes. For 5, I think I will go ahead and check one box. It had to be a little bit more than 5 for me to check both of those boxes. Okay, provide mental exercise. It sure did. And here we have the subcategories: critical thinking, moral thinking, reflective thinking, imaginative thinking, and all of these are defined down here below. Um, so, overall critical thinking includes analyzing, evaluating, reasoning, and forming conclusions. I feel like I did a lot of that reading this book, so I'm going to check both of those marks. Moral thinking. Oh my gosh. Right. So, how did the king treat his subjects? How did the gods treat Enkidu and Gilgamesh after they murdered the guardian of the forest, and in so doing took away the home for the animals, and then because they murdered the guardian, plus they also took the trees, um, most, if not all, of the trees, and that was the sacred forest. It did not belong to them, and they just got away with it, as far as I can tell. It was only later, after they got back to Uruk, when Ishtar came, and she was flirting with Gilgamesh and wanted Gilgamesh to partner up with her, and Gilgamesh said no. And then she had a fit and went up to the chief god Anu and complained, and then got the bowl of heaven and did all of that. I mean, she then um, caused a lot of damage, and then Gilgamesh and Enkidu killed the bull of heaven, and Enkidu kind of disrespected Ishtar by throwing the thigh at her, and that seemed to upset the gods. And then at that point, it was like, okay, justice is going to be served. One of these dynamic duo have to die, and they decided that was going to be Enkidu, and so Enkidu was the one that ended up dying. So there's like a consequence, and the consequence is supreme. So just morally, it's just interesting to me to think, like, what's right and wrong in this culture. The high, not the high, but the sacred prostitute priest, um, and just all of that, and how that's part of the culture. So moral thinking, I would give that 2 check marks for sure. That really got me thinking about the morality of that country. Reflective thinking, yes, I was thinking about this story quite a bit after I had read it. Imaginative thinking, I like the bits about how the sun god was running through the tunnel of the mountain during the nighttime. That's really imaginative. And then the jeweled fruit that was in I guess, the morning garden, because that's where the sun god Shamash would come out. So that was pretty interesting. So imaginative thinking, I like that a lot, and I would give that a pretty good rating there for that. I feel like this book, this reading experience, did give me quite a bit of entertainment value. A big interest of mine is just kind of like stepping into a time machine and going back in time, and trying to enter into the minds of others to hear what their thoughts are, to hear what their stories are, to get a sense of what is right and wrong for them. All of that. That to me, that's entertaining. So I would give this 2 check marks here. Improved wisdom, yes, I think it did offer some human insights, as I have talked about just recently here. So I would give that 2 check marks. I think it did that a lot. Gave me insights into other cultures, absolutely, a lot. Did it absorb my mind? I'm not sure that it absorbed my mind on a great scale. I think it did some. Where it kind of absorbed my mind is when I was thinking about it afterwards and how the story would come to me. But while I was reading it, maybe because it wasn't as tactile, or it wasn't multi-sensory as some of my other reading experiences have been. Eloquence, I would say a little bit. I would say like 1 box worth of eloquence. It's a poem. However, there's the feature with this epic poem where parts of it are repeated, and that's just the nature of the beast. That's just what this epic poem is going to be like for that time period. But as a reader, it's kind of uh, it's just not very interesting to read something over and over. Um, so, but poetry in general, I think, treats language efficiently. It kind of compresses the meaning. It plays with meaning and stuff. And so there's some of that. There was a little bit of that. So let's go ahead and score this bottom half of the sheet. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 boxes times 2 for a total of 20. And 1, 2, 3 were not xed, so that's 20 minus 3, so a total score of 17. And that is up above, you see outstanding 17 and 20. Wow, so that is outstanding. Great. So where would I put this in my overall rating bookshelf? That's what this is here. Level 1 is the best of the best of the best. Level 2 is pretty gosh darn good, but just not the best. But better than level 3, which is better than level 4. And level 5, you're pounding your head against the wall. It was a hellish book. So for this one here, I would consider the subjective part, the top part half of the form with the stars, and then the rating part, putting it all together. I would I would place the Epic of Gilgamesh, here it comes, on the level 2 bookshelf. So that's it for the Epic of Gilgamesh. Up next is a book that comes from ancient Greece, and it is a classic. It's always in the top 100, 500, whatever list of classic books. And it is a classic. If you'll read it, you'll be able to get some insight into modern day culture, and that is the Iliad.